everyone. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Zach and Fangirl Reviews Your Favorite Comic. Is that what our name is?
Something close to that.
Judges. We're judging. We're judging your favorite
We
comic.
almost got the title of our own show right. Because we're professionals.
We're professionals. And of course, this is the second episode of our series. So by, I think, 20th, we'll get it right. We'll get it right properly.
This is actually, because of that mistake, this is a special collector's item episode. So buy 2 copies, keep one sealed. This is going to be worth something.
That's true. And as you can see, joined me with about this. It's my other co-host Zach. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am okay. There was like a huge thunderstorms today at Baltimore, and I had to drive like 1.5 hours, which typically takes me 45.
Did you drive in this storm? Because it was all over the East Coast.
Yeah, I had to, because unlike New York people, we drive to places.
Yeah, because you're all suckers. You're all suckers.
Yeah, and we're not suckers. We're efficient like that. We would rather sit in the car for like 1.5 hours rather than take public transportation. Damn it! Like that's how we are. So one thing I want to mention just before we get started. For some reason, the streaming service that we're using really chops off my video. It makes it crappy. I'm not sure why it does that. And I'm looking at different options. Unfortunately, I didn't get to it in time, but I'm trying my best to get it to you, get it better, improve it, because we here at Fangirls, we strive for excellence and professionalism. And, at some point I'll get that corrected. So I am apologizing ahead of time. Here, the thing is, when I see it over here right now at the time of recording, it's fine. But somehow, by the time YouTube gets it and presents it to your computer, it's all like
your side of the video.
Pop, pop. So at least I think the sound-wise, it will be fine. I got myself a fancy-dancy microphone. So
look at that. You're like a 1930s radio broadcaster over there.
Right. I mean, I wish I could mimic that, but I can't. But the thing is, like, it sounds clearer, right, to you?
Oh, it sounds good.
Yeah, okay. So it's actually like, our good friend Peter who forced me into buying that.
Oh, wow.
So we're looking at different options. Sorry about that. Now that the tangent over, what are we talking about this episode, Zach?
Today we are going to be talking about Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang's new 52 run on Wonder Woman.
This is the fancy omnibus that recently came out. I love this chunk of omnibus because it's perfect size, I believe, for omnibus, because DC can really go ahead and make these giant murder weapons.
Yeah, DC uses the kind of like thick, high-grade paper that Marvel used to use, which is awesome, but it also means that their books can, you actually can use that to like kill your enemies.
Right, kill your enemies and curse them or whatever it is that you're doing. So
we're actually angrily across the room if you so choose.
Yeah, those kind of things. So we're only going to be talking about Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang's run on New 52, because after this, I think it continues on for Meredith Finch, who ends it before the rebirth comes about. So before we get going, a short history on Wonder Woman. She was created by Professor Marston.
William Marston, yes.
Oh, yeah, William Marston. There's a lovely movie supposedly about it, about his life and his wife and mistress and their polyamorous relationship, which is all very fancy, and my little brain do not understand all of that, but that's okay. So when she first came about in Sensational Comics. Number one, that's where she made her appearance. And then since then, the character went on to by different writer, George Perez, Gail Simone, to name a few. Phil Jimenez in the modern times have done her run. Greg Rucka, sorry forget to mention that he's one of the best. And then even recently in Rebirth, Greg Rucka wrote the first 24, I believe, issues. Then she went on to multiple writers. Now finally she's being written by G. Willow Wilson, who is my girl, and I love her because she gave me Miss Marvel. But today we're just going to be talking about Brian Azzarello's run, which is the New 52, which is DC's reboot that happened in 2011, and then 2016 they're like, we're done with that, we're just gonna go and do another reboot, and then Rebirth came to be.
Yeah, 2016 they went, just kidding, we weren't really doing that, forget it happened, we're the old DC universe again.
Right, and the thing is, surprisingly, it was 52, 52 issues of everything that came to be, and there is also a 52, which is a
so they
series.
Could pretend they meant it the whole time.
Right, something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's fine. It's all fine. It's great. So, Zach, what did you think about this story or this book? What's your feeling about it?
Well, let me start with something entirely positive to say, which is that this might be visually the most beautiful Wonder Woman run I've ever seen. And I'm including George Perez in that ranking. Cliff Chiang's artwork, he has such a distinctive style. It's extreme, it's really streamlined. It's a little bit cartoony, but it also has a lot of realism and expressiveness to it. And it is just gorgeous. The storytelling is great. The artwork is great. He draws, I think, about 2/3 of the issues during this run. He doesn't do the whole thing because it is, of course, illegal for a comic artist to actually draw all of the issues of their own run in the modern era. But he draws most of the issues, and they are great. And I think it's important to point out that the coloring is so consistent and so gorgeous in the run, too. The colors are by Matt Wilson. And they are, I think, as good as the pencils and inks. It's the whole run, it has this sort of tone like everything takes place in a kind of like perpetual twilight. And I think it's just beautiful, just beautiful. And that artwork goes so much, it goes so far to making it a readable run, whatever I or anyone else thinks of the story. So I mean that's what I'd start with on this. What do you think of that?
Oh, I 100% agree. And then on top of that, I would also say Matt Wilson also did Wicked and the Divine, the colorist for Wicked and the Divine, and then War of the Realms. Happened to meet him on C2E2 last year. Very nice person. Yes, very nice person. Colorists don't get enough credit, I believe. Because
no, not nearly enough. And yeah. I've got this like pet theory that they are the secret sauce toward making comic art work across a long run. Like the consistency of art, even as artists change over, that depends on the colors.
Right. And the thing is, like, his coloring is also very simple. Like, it's pretty much the basic colors, but it's all vibrant and it just comes alive, which for a story that involves gods, you need that. I feel like you need like as much vibrancy, as much pizzazz as you can, and he delivers on that.
Yeah, and I think he also gives it a kind of unearthly vibe during the scenes that take place not on Earth. There is a real sense of kind of like exotic foreign strangeness when you step into the realm of the divine in this run. And I think that comes, a lot of that comes from the colors.
Right. And from the Cliff Chiang's point of view, I absolutely loved the character design of each of the gods. So I have a different, so the same weekend I read this, I also read Hercules from in the Marvel universe.
The Greg Pak, Jeff Van Lente run.
Fred Van Lente.
Van Lente, sorry.
Yeah. So Greg Pak and Fred Van Lente starting from the World War Hulk, all the way to Hulk series. I read like the whole thing, and in there the gods are pretty much human. Like they're just muscly or scantily clad if it's a woman. They're just human. There's no there is no design for it. You just know it because the name they said. Over here, they actually have specific design for each of the gods. For example, Hades is, I'm trying to find, find a thing. Where is it? anyway, Hades is there with like fire, like candles and fire. Aris looks like Brian Azzarello. If you look,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. Aris is like,
and that was deliberate. I've read.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was not a coincidence.
Okay, so he looks like Brian Azzarello with like blood, like, you know, all over splattered over him because he's like a war. Then what's that one? The one that is like a he's the messenger. I forgot his name.
Hermes.
Hermes is like, he has like a feathers and like, you know, wings and everything. I absolutely loved that. I loved that different characters.
Designs are great. They're sort of they seem sort of informed by like traditional Greek mythological illustrations, but then Chiang also pulls from all over the place. There are like 1920s flapper fashions that are being incorporated into this. There's sort of accoutrements of Viking warriors. I mean, he's drawing from so many different sources to create these really, really interesting designs that don't look like anything that DC had ever used for these gods before.
Right. And I also loved Wonder Woman's new costume. Like, you know, the costume that she wears, it's like, it's pretty neat. I thought it was pretty nifty. It
works, and it was controversial when it came out. I think it was partly controversial when it came out because the original illustrations were by Jim Lee, and they all showed her with those like stupid jackets with the sleeves rolled up that Jim Lee puts on every single character that he designs. But here, I think it works, and it sort of introduces the more armored Wonder Woman look that we've sort of gotten ever since, and that really got hammered home by the movie when that came out.
Right.
But of course, it makes sense in the context of this character.
Yeah, this is kind of like, you know, the design of it, and you know, this is her feature that he went for. I really liked how the way Wonder Woman looks.
So that's the art. Let's talk about the story.
Right.
What did you think about this story, and how did you think? Let me put that in two parts. What did you think about this story, and what did you think about this as a Wonder Woman story?
Okay.
Because I think those are two different questions.
These are two different questions. I loved the story. I loved it, you know, because it was just about, I love this kind of gods misbehaving, like gods just being weird, misogynist, often racist or like anti-human, just like can't keep their dick in their pants or vagina in their pants, whatever you want to call it. You know, I'm equal opportunist over here. And then just scheming, backstabbing each other, and just for power. I love those stories. I don't know why I do, but I love those stories. As that story, it's really good. As a Wonder Woman story, I don't know.
See, I've got to push back and say that even on that first level, I don't think it works just as a story about like scheming politics. And I love scheming political stories. Like I was a political nerd going back to high school. So like stories about like people like backstabbing and trying to fight their way into power, I go for that. But there need to be stakes. And I didn't know what the stakes were in this run. Like, this is really a series about people ultimately vying for the throne of Olympus. That's what this is. People want to take control of Olympus, and we've got like a Game of Thrones thing going on as people try to fight for who gets to be the heir of Zeus and who gets to take control. But what does the throne of Olympus mean? We never actually learn that in this run. We never see what the significance, what happens when you become the ruler of Olympus. What power do the gods have on Earth? We don't know. And if the run doesn't tell us what it actually means to be the king of the gods or the queen of the gods, why should we care about who wins this fight?
But I thought that was a point, that they're so petty that they don't care. They just want the title. Like, it does nothing.
If Azzarello had committed to making it that kind of like dark satire, and if at the end of this somebody ends up with them on the throne and realizes it means nothing and the fight was actually just empty, I would have gone for that. But I never got that at the end. I never felt like the moral or the theme of this story was the quest for power leads to nothing. I just felt like he was using people fighting for power as a vehicle to do a lot of fight scenes, but it was a cheat because he never actually figured out what the fight was supposed to be over.
Interesting. Well, before we move any further, we should say what the story was about. So the story is pretty much Hermes comes to this lady and then tells, who is impregnated by Zeus, who took a shape to impregnate her, and then he disappears. As Zeus does, as one does. And he disappears, so therefore he lives living a power vacuum. Obviously, Hera, his wife, is livid about this discrepancy, discretion, I guess you want to call it, discretion of Zeus's penis, and decides to target that woman. And Hermes comes and brings Wonder Woman into the fold in order to protect that woman. And then all of these things that we are talking about breaks loose, and then Wonder Woman becomes involved in that. And then a lot of backstabbing and all of that going on. That's pretty much in a nutshell. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I actually didn't think about it all that much. I finished it within 4.5 hours. I was very entertained. I loved the look of the things. I'm like, oh, look, everyone's fighting over everyone.
Okay.
And also, I would also say, though, if this was an Image series or a dark, an independent series, I think I would be harsher on this.
Why is that?
Because that's more I'm looking at those in terms of more artsy. Versus when it comes to big two, I look at it more from blockbuster, and I kind of judge them less harsh.
I had to look at it the same way I would look at an Image series,
right?
Because I thought this sure as hell wasn't a Wonder Woman series. I think the only way to get something out of this run is to imagine it as just a total reconceptualization of Wonder Woman, a total reimagining, something close to a really extended Elseworld series. Because I think that's really what Azzarello is trying to do. I don't think he's trying to tell a traditional Wonder Woman story, and I don't think he's succeeding if he was.
Right.
So, let's talk a little bit about the character of Wonder Woman and how she's presented here. Because it's interesting. This is the second time I've read this run. I read it the first time when it came out, and then again to prepare for this episode. The first time I read it, the feeling I remember coming away with is that the character of Diana gets absolutely lost here. That she is just a cipher for at least the first half of the run, maybe all the way through. Reading it now, I think that maybe she actually stands out more than the rest of the characters. And that's not necessarily a compliment. That just may be a statement on how thin the characterization is of everybody here. But mainly what we get out of Diana is just how she reflects off of the people around her. And we do get from that something that I think is supposed to approach the original way that the character was conceived. That what we do learn is that she's committed to the idea of compassion. And that ultimately, she's not going to commit violence for the sake of violence. She stands for mercy. And that is distinctive. But I think that we really have to squint hard to see it. And so I think the idea of Wonder Woman gets lost in this Wonder Woman series.
That I completely agree. And the thing is, so this is more of a confession time. I've read Greg Rucka's first pre New 52 Wonder Woman series. I read this, then post in Rebirth Rucka series. And I attempted Phil Ziminous's Wonder Woman, which I lasted for about 8 issues, and then I had to give up
because
it was a nothing burger because nothing was happening. I do not understand what Wonder Woman is or who she is as a person, because everyone tells me she stands for hope. Everyone gets wowed by her anytime she enters a room. Everyone is always talking about her. But what? Why? What about it? I don't understand that. And the thing is, when I watched the movie, I quite got that because I felt oh, okay, she's a little bit naive, because how she was, where she was raised and everything. But then once she sees all the horror of the world, she's like, no, we're not going to stand for this. We're going to rise up and we're going to fight. She inspires those people. There's a no man's land and all of that scene happened. which was all great. And I kind of got that from the movies. But whenever I read a comic book about her, I'm like, okay, what now? So I was beginning to realize
this is a confusion that seems to be endemic in comics. Every single writer who takes over Wonder Woman seems to start their run by talking about how nobody really understands who Wonder Woman is, and it's so difficult to write her. And I'm not sure that I've ever totally understood that. Because I think that she is exactly as complex as any other DC character, which is to say not complex at all. I don't see anybody walking into a run of Superman saying, I don't understand this character. Why is Superman a hero? I don't get it. Well, Wonder Woman has as much motivation as Superman.
Well, here's the thing. I don't even understand why Superman is a hero either.
So maybe we're just mystified by DC is our problem. We are mystified by characters who don't have an obvious psychological motivation to be heroes. But I think that really is part and parcel of traditionally what Wonder Woman is supposed to be. She doesn't have a deep psychological motivation to be a hero. It's the society that she comes out of. This Paradise Island, Themyscira, depending on what they call it in whichever era, it's a paradise, and it doesn't have violence. It doesn't have masculine aggression running it. And so she has this kind of pure recognition of what humans can achieve that she can bring into the corrupt masculine world outside. And so she makes the outside world better by bringing her purity into it.
Yeah, it's like, whenever you're working in a company, you have a third-person audit. And they come and tell you
Wonder
how
Woman
you can
is
be
the
better.
third-person audit of
Wonder
society.
Woman, Superman, both are third-person audit for DC. I understand Lex Luthor. I completely understand where Lex Luthor comes from. Why are we worshiping this person? Who is this person? Where is he from? Why is he so much superpowered? If you know what I mean?
Right.
I understand Lex Luthor's motivation for hating Superman. I don't understand our motivation for loving him. Short, other than he was the first ever superhero, first ever, all of the meta knowledge, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But I don't get it. Same with Wonder Woman. I don't get it. Because I feel like as a lady nerd, I am bound to love her because, she's the first, I think she's the first ever female superhero. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But why? Why? I don't get it.
I see where you're coming from, but I think it's possible to make her. I think it's possible to give her more depth and motivation without stripping her of the sort of distinctive traits that make Wonder Woman Wonder Woman. And I think that this run kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater. And there are two particularly controversial decisions that Azzarello makes here, and I think both of these are going to involve some spoilers. So I guess we should throw up a warning here for anybody who doesn't want to know anything about this run. But there are a couple of things he did that sparked a lot of outrage. Number one is he does the first big surprise reveal here in this run is that Wonder Woman, in fact, does have a father, and that father is Zeus.
I have thoughts about that, but continue.
Well, I'd like to hear your thoughts about that, because this was when this happened. There was a lot of negative reaction, maybe more than anything else in this run. But what do you think that does to the character, and how do you think it plays in this run?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because guess what? She was made, Zeus was made her father, not some truck stop person, not some truck stop driver. It was still within a mythology. It was still within it's still godly. It's still outrage, otherworldly. To me, it does absolutely nothing. Whether she was born from clay or whether she was fathered by Zeus made no difference. What it would make difference if she was fathered by a Mississippi salesman, insurance salesman. Nothing against Mississippi insurance salesman, but however when I say that her name, Hippolyta.
So you were never in a production of Midsummer Night's Dream when you were in third grade, so you don't have that pronunciation down by heart.
Oh, hang on. Are you talking about Shakespeare there?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. You hate Shakespeare and you hate the Beatles.
I hate Shakespeare, Beatles, and soup. The food, the soup.
That's right.
I don't like those three things.
I forgot about your strong opinions on these things.
Right. But that's the thing. Like, if you know what I mean.
It was a school assignment, ma'am. It's not like I did my own little Shakespeare production in my backyard.
I would not put that past you, Zach. I know you enough to know that. I would not put that past you. But yeah, so to me, I was like, oh, like, I heard that, even though I wasn't reading comic book full time, I heard that controversy. Oh my God, Wonder Woman. And I'm like, oh, I honestly thought that's what they did. That I honestly thought her father is some normal person. That's what they did. But then when they said Zeus, I'm like, okay, so it's still otherworldly, it's still fantastical, it's still embedded in Greek mythology, which her, that's her whole thing is. So what's the problem?
I disagree.
Really?
I actually, if they were going to go out of their way to establish that Wonder Woman has a father, and I don't think that that's something that they necessarily need to do for this run or any Wonder Woman run, I would have preferred that it just be some insurance salesman from Mississippi. And I'd say I think that's true for a couple of reasons. Number one, I do not think we need yet another Chosen One narrative in comics. It is the most overdone cliche. Every single story needs to have their hero come from a chosen bloodline and have some kind of claim to a throne that they then fight for, or some legacy that they need to claim. We don't need this again. And we don't need it shoved onto a character who's already existed for the better part of a century without having that kind of narrative there. It diminishes her rather than adds to it. And I think it does one other thing too. I think it turns her story into a psychological story about a child rebelling against her father. It's a daddy doesn't love me story. And I think it turns her into a lesser character because she's just fighting basically a family Electra complex squabble instead of doing something independent and heroic. So I understand why people were pissed about this. I don't think that it's necessarily anti-feminist the way people were saying. I don't think it's deliberately anti-feminist, but I think it may be accidentally anti-feminist because it turns her into a character who's defined by fighting against her father.
Was she though? Because she never said that I'm fighting. She's like, oh, I'm just in it. If you know what I mean? She never says it. I never got the idea that she, like, all of a sudden, because she was already helping this girl, right? Helping all of this.
But she's on the run because of it, and it's all because she was fathered by this guy.
I know she was on the run, but it wasn't like all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, Zeus is my father? I'm gonna protect you double now.
No, I mean, because I think Azzarello is good enough on the nuts and bolts of writing that he's not going to do that kind of. I mean, look, he's not writing in the 1960s. This isn't the Silver Age. He's not going to make Wonder Woman do like a melodramatic declaration. But I think that that's what it does narratively to this run. Everything that happens after that reveal happens because Wonder Woman has discovered that this is her bloodline and this is why all this stuff is happening to her.
So if this wasn't happened, do you think she would have dropped this lady and then not help her?
No, I think that she would have had to discover a motivation for helping this lady that goes beyond I'm doing this because it's in my blood or I'm doing this because I got to fight daddy.
Right. But the thing is, her motivation, what would her motivation be? I'm Wonder Woman. I love people. I'm going to save you. Because that's what her motivation always is. So how does that differ, if you know what I mean?
Well, it differs because it doesn't have that psychological personal drive. She's saying, I'm doing this because these are the values that I hold to. And I've discovered something in myself and something in the way that I was raised and in the society I come from that tells me that this is right. And so I'm going to stand up and do this because it's right, not because it's personal. And I think that for her, this fight in this run is personal. And that makes her less of a hero.
I don't know if it makes her less of a hero.
I think it makes her more of a Marvel hero and less of a classical DC style hero.
Oh boy. I can't even argue about that because I don't know the difference between
Well, I think, the traditional thing, what everybody will say is that DC heroes are a kind of like mythical creation. They are larger than life. They're gods. Marvel heroes are human. They're, Peter Parker struggling to pay the rent, or Captain America feeling sad because his kid sidekick was dead, even though he wasn't really. But Marvel heroes are really on a human level. Wonder Woman is literally and figuratively a god. But I don't think she comes off very godly here. Even though this is a story about gods, she's a very psychologically driven human character.
Maybe that's what needed to happen, though. Because the thing is, like, because I kind of liked that. Because the thing is, like that's one of the reasons that I don't connect to DC characters as much as I connect to, oh, wow, this is like a psychological thing. Like, you know, you are actually being my shrink right now. You are helping me realizing, like, why I care for Marvel character more than DC. So that's the thing. Like, you know, to me, it didn't change anything for me. Like, I'm like, okay, because she would have still done it for whatever reason. Does it change anything? What? Maybe because, like, I am the kind of person who's like, your cause doesn't change your action. If you know what I mean? Like, you know, your action should be what's right thing to do, despite the cause. I don't care about the cause. So to me, I didn't see it as that. I don't know.
I mean, full disclosure, I'm much more...
It's a very interesting point. It's a very
I connect to Marvel characters traditionally more than DC characters too, but I think there's something to be said for a character being true to itself when a writer takes them on. And I don't think that this is true to what Wonder Woman is. So I understand where the critics were coming from on this point.
But at the same time, though, I think it kind of makes her a little bit human, because humans are also driven by a personal thing more than godly thing. And I don't know. I feel like as an elf, given that that's what New 52 is at this time, it's kind of something different to explore about Wonder Woman.
It is, and I think that it's I think that it's more tolerable reading it altogether in retrospect than it was if you could think at the time this is the only Wonder Woman we're ever going to get from now on. Now that it's clear that this was a kind of temporary conception, you know, we've got 52 issues of it here, and then it stops, and we get the classic Greg Rucka Wonder Woman again. I think we can look at it really as this is a kind of alternate take on this character, and that makes it a little bit more acceptable to me, I think.
Well, I mean, you know, I kind of understand where people were coming. If you're a hardcore Wonder Woman fan and you see that difference happen, I can see where this people coming from, because I had to live through some time when Steve Rogers was Hydra. So
that's right. That's right. And you made it. You made it out. You made it out the other side. You survived.
Yeah, I made it out to the other side by the sheer will of, like, everything's gonna go back to normal, you guys. Everything will always comes back to normal, or the status quo.
This is what everybody should remember when you read Big Two comics. Right. Sooner or later, everything will go back to the way it was. If you don't like it now, it's fine. Relax, wait 2 years, it will be exactly the way it was before.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. To me, like, you're bringing a very interesting point. I'm agreeing with it, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I think, what's the term? Agree to disagree. Like, to me, it didn't make any difference. Okay. Like, to me, I was like, oh, okay. I would be super pissed if it was some random person, because Hippolyta, her mother, like, will not, like, no, I'm not, like, just because some random, like, that's more of like a fantasy of a writer, that some random person would be like, you know, like, she would fuck some random person and get impregnated, and
now
stupid.
Speaking of Hippolyta, this was the other really controversial thing about this run, and and that was the depiction of the Amazons here. Azzarello gives us at one point a really vivid sense that Paradise Island is not so much the pure paradise that we have been led to believe in other Wonder Woman runs. They are not perfect people. They rape, they pillage, they are extremely violent toward the world of men. This is not a society of innocent women or wronged women or perfect women. And this was a very, very controversial decision. If anything was painted as anti-feminist in this run, it was probably that. So I'm wondering, what was your reaction to those scenes in that revelation?
So the thing is it anti-feminist to say that women are not perfect?
You're asking me? I'm not.
Hang on. It's a rhetorical question.
Okay,
rhetorical question.
You are trained in classical rhetoric.
Right. Yeah. So I am starting with my question. Now I'm going to present my thought.
Okay.
So as I told you, I was reading the Hercules at the same time as this. So Hercules has the same idea. Like, it's the same mythology of Amazon and Themyscira. Well, they don't call it Themyscira, but they call it Amazon and the ladies of that. And then when I came here, I saw that too. I thought it adds some edge to them, because I was like, okay, so these people just like hang about and just living in like a perfect world and like all sisterly. This is one of the things I really liked the 8th issue of Phil Zimmerman's run that I read, that there was a scheme to overthrow the royalty in that run, which I didn't finish. So I don't know how it kind of comes about. And that thread kind of continues over here as well, that there's a friction among them, which is very natural, very normal. And yeah, they're not perfect. They're not perfect people. Like, I feel like that brings them equal level on like, yeah, they're assholes. If you know what I mean? That brings them equal level to, I guess, like men, like, all the men war story, like, or all the tribes, like, like them, which are only men, but like, who are like military, who are like fighting. Like, I feel like it made them the same.
Right. This is an idea that I don't dislike on principle. Certainly it's different from the Paradise Island we've seen before, but it's also genuinely informed by classical mythology, and this is Azzarello really going back to the sources and looking at how were the Amazons depicted in ancient mythology. And it sets up Wonder Woman to rebel not just against the kind of masculine violence and authoritarianism of Zeus and Olympus, but also against the feminine violence and authoritarianism of Paradise Island. And I think that that's actually an interesting setup. I don't think that he ever fully explores it. And maybe that's because he didn't quite stay on this run as long as he might have, or as long as he maybe originally intended to. But I do feel like in the context of this run, he sort of throws this idea out there and then never goes back to it. So we just sort of see it and go, oh, that's really interesting. That's kind of compelling. And then that's it. It just sits there waiting for somebody to explore it.
Correct. And the thing is, like, I think he had to do it because of, like, I often talk about too many things going on and not, like, nothing ever gets, so this is like a subplot that he introduced. And I have a feeling that he was thinking that he's going to be there for the whole 52 haul, which he wasn't. And even though in the end that gets set up again, because, there are Amazons and Wonder Woman has like a friction. And I was like, oh, that's really great. He's setting that up, but he never gets to, explore that and talk about it. But to me, I'm not saying that I don't like the idea of like bad behavior of, a certain group of people having added to other group of people who don't necessarily do that bad behavior and say like, hey, look, now they're equal, if you know what I mean. Because just because military tribes of men they would just go wherever and then they would rape, murder and whatever, doesn't mean the female, in order to be just the same level, should be doing that. But at the same time, why not? If you know what I mean.
Right.
We can go on and on about that discussion. Like, but the thing is, like, the fact that it was done, I thought that it adds some edge to them. Because, like I said, so far everything I read, they're just like, they're this military, they're learning to fight. Against what? What are you learning to fight against?
Right.
What's your thing?
But and now again, I think that part of the controversy here is that it was, when this was coming out and when it was the only DC continuity that existed, it took away this version of Paradise Island that George Perez had created when he first rebooted Wonder Woman after Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is a very, very different idea of this island populated by the souls of women who have been murdered by the violence of men. Which is this
God!
Well, yeah, and I know it sounds strange when I say it, but it actually is this really beautiful concept of like these women who have had to suffer and be the victims of violence in the outside world have found this kind of strength and new life in a society of their own in a world that they have to themselves.
And
that's a really interesting concept, I think. And it's a very, very different concept from this one. And I think that people who had become attached to that and who had seen that concept as central to the sort of identity of who Wonder Woman was, they were the ones who were probably most upset that it had been lost.
So I haven't read George Perez's Wonder Woman yet, so I'm going to read it. But here's my question, though. What do those souls do? They just hang about and they're just like living in harmony. They never go out to revenge.
I think you need to read the run. I think you need to see for yourself.
Yeah, okay. Because that's something that I always think about. Because, you know, I'm always very annoyed by all the ladies whose life has been ruined by violence by men. It's a very complicated thing. And I have this idea of all those ladies are trapped here and then just hovering as like souls, waiting for someone to revenge that so they can go in peace in whichever direction.
I think that this actually is part of what sort of the pre-New 52 identity of Wonder Woman is. You know, you asked what defined her as a character. I think that actually might get very close to the heart of it, which is there is a third way here between victimization and revenge. And that is strength through compassion and mercy.
Oh, I
saying
agree
that
with that.
you are going to be strong and you're going to be independent, not through seeking revenge in the same manner of violence of the people who struck at you in the first place, but strength through compassion that they could never understand. I think that's the sort of pre-New 52 version of Wonder Woman. And I think that that's actually a stronger and more interesting character than the one that we get here.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't care for that. I really don't care for that. I hate the idea that, oh my God, your life has been ruined. But you know what? You should be compassionate because, my God, I hate that. I
think that there are a million revenge stories in the world. I think that there are many fewer stories about people being strong enough to find a way other than violence. And we very rarely see that in superhero comics, which are fundamentally action stories. They're like action movies, so ultimately you have to have a scene of violence to hold together every issue or every arc. So it's very, very hard to have a character who stands for anything except the glorious release of violence. And I think Wonder Woman, outside of this run, is one of the very few characters who does stand for that. I don't think this Wonder Woman stands for that.
Right. But the thing is, at the same time, though, you know, it's like the idea of like saddling that with ladies all the time. I really don't care for that. I also don't care for that either. Like,
well,
it's like,
out of left field here, it would be interesting to see that embodied in a male character. I think it would also be controversial to see that embodied in a male character who stood for compassion and something other than strength through violence. I think it would be very rare to see that, almost unheard of to see that in superhero comics.
No. I'm talking about that, all these ladies living in this paradise island because, oh my God, they had violence done to them by men. Look, why is it like all the ladies' story have to be embedded in rape and murder? Like, why is that a thing? If you know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about. I don't know about that.
Well, it doesn't have to be, but I think that was the story that George Perez was telling.
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing. I haven't read it, so I can't talk about it. You know, I'm going to read it, and then we can discuss it.
I mean, because there are lots of different ways to conceive Wonder Woman. You know, like we said, every single writer who takes on Wonder Woman feels a need to reinvent the character because everybody says they don't understand what this character is supposed to be. So consequently, there are a million different ways to look at who this character is and what motivates her. That was the pre-crisis. That was the post-crisis version. This is the New 52 version.
Right.
But it's just two versions.
But the thing is, like what you were saying, though, that having a male character be compassionate is actually different because society tells them otherwise. That goes against trope. If you know what I mean? To me, that's super interesting because that goes against trope and what society tells us.
I think, there is something to be said for that. I think in some ways, a Superman who's not violent is more interesting than a Wonder Woman who's not violent. I actually think that's true.
Yeah, because the thing is like, I'm sorry, no. I reject the idea that only one lady character, female character in DC who is like more famous than Harley Quinn. Because tell me other DC lady character, female character, Barbara Gordon, like,
Black Canary, Batgirl.
Right. Like, who is this all powerful? And her thing is, I'm going to be compassionate. Like, I'm not going to be like the all powerful lady character, which is like, okay, that's what you teach all us ladies all us regular powerless ladies, you tell us that you need to be compassionate, you need to be nice, you need to be like, you know, polite. You shouldn't say too much.
But she's not submissive. She's not submissive, and she's not subservient. That's a very key part of the character.
I know.
She makes other people subservient to her, because that all comes out of like the kind of weird, kinky sexuality that William Marston very deliberately put in his original Wonder Woman run. Anybody who doesn't know the background of him and that character, that is a fascinating story.
Right. I don't know. I mean, it's just like it to me that. But then again, it's something that it's personal for me, and I think I need to explore.
I hear where you're coming from.
Yeah,
that's a really valid point.
Yeah, I need to explore that myself. But I just really like every time she says that, I just die a little inside. Like no, don't say that, because that's all we're being told time and time again. Say something different, because you are supposed to be the best of us. You're supposed to be this all-powerful person. I'm getting way too passionate about this, but you know,
this is good. This is good climactic. This is what we should bring to this show. I like it.
Right? Like it's like you have to be like, you know, because I just need her to be that. Like I don't know. That's one of the reasons I probably connect to Manhunter, one super unknown DC character. You know, I connect to that character more than I connect to Wonder Woman. I connect to Black Widow more. Like I connect to Captain Marvel more, like even Miss Marvel, but then again, she's a kid and she hasn't seen a lot of weird shit happen to her. So like, that's why I connect to those characters more than this lady who is also telling us to be polite, because that's what I cannot raises the question. Who's saying that? Is it the character saying that, or is the writer? Like, you know, like it's like, what are you trying to tell me? I always kind of get a little, in the end of the day, we all know it's comics. Don't take it too seriously. But still, if you know what I mean.
Well, but this is, I think this, more than a lot of comics, is a comic that explores a lot of serious and important issues, even if it is ultimately just telling an action movie story. So I think if there's, you know, this is one of those characters where the passion makes sense. And I think that you make a lot of really good arguments here. They're not necessarily all arguments that I agree with, and not necessarily the kind of Wonder Woman that connects with me personally the most. But I think they're really good arguments.
Yeah, but then again, and that's what I'm saying, though. I'm not saying that Wonder Woman should all of a sudden become a revengeful person. No, we should have other characters for that. But I'm just saying why maybe I'm not connecting to her as much.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You know, I don't want a version where all of a sudden Wonder Woman is like guns and no, I don't want that, because then that's not Wonder Woman anymore. That's a different character. You see what I'm saying?
It's not Frank Castle Wonder Woman.
Right. You know, that's what. But I mean, what I'm trying to say, like, why this character may not work with me on a full, you know, on a full-time basis. But the thing is, like, a lot of others love it. You know, a lot of other people love her. So, you know, it's just like a lot of other ladies love her. But I am just kind of, I'm like, no, that's not for me. But anyway, back to Brian Azzarello's run. Was that your second point, or there was like something more?
No, I think that was the second point that I wanted to bring up in terms of controversy. And I think that actually is as good a time as any for us to give our verdicts.
Right.
So do you want to tell us your sub? Okay, go ahead.
I do want to mention, though, one little thing.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed like Hera's relationship with Hippolyta.
This is true. That. I actually think that Hera may be the most interesting three-dimensional character in this run. There was, especially as it goes on, I sort of, in the back of my head, started thinking to myself this time around, maybe Azzarello should have just been writing a series by Hera. Like, maybe that's the series he wanted to do, because her arc throughout this whole run is so interesting. It's more interesting, I think, than Diana's.
Right? I absolutely agree. Like, it's just like, she goes from this, like, just sitting there and being seething, jealous wife. She goes from being Cersei of Game of Thrones to, like, another character. Like, I don't know who would be like like, you know, she kind of becomes compassionate. She learns to forgive. She learns to realize that, no, I should not be punishing the women for whatever the shit Zeus was dead. I should be going after Zeus.
Right. And the way that she goes on this kind of like moral and personal arc, you know, learning that there is more to the way of life that she's been practicing, for all eternity. That I thought that was so interesting. I wish I could have seen more of that story. And she has such a distinctive voice too. She has this kind of like this sort of like edgy, sarcastic tone the whole time. I could have listened to her talk all day.
Right. I'm trying to remember, like, who, I feel like, have you ever seen Downton Abbey?
Yes.
Like, so Maggie, what's her name? Professor McGonagall.
Yes.
I forgot, like, her name. I feel like that's her at the old age, but she was getting there.
That is so right. She is young Dame Maggie Smith.
Right, she's getting there, and not just Dame Maggie Smith in Downton Abbey, but Dame Maggie Smith in real life. Like, this is her arc. She's heading there. So I really enjoyed that. And also there's one character that shows up later called First Man. Is that supposed to be Hercules?
I don't think so. I think that's just a kind of original character that Azzarello created, and frankly, barely a character. I thought that was so thinly sketched out. He felt like, I need a big bad here. Just don't even bother to give him a real name.
Yeah, Apollo is busy. So
right.
I thought that he was more of like, a way to bring everyone together at the end rather than him standing.
He's a plot device. He's not a character. And Azzarello really, especially as the run goes on and he sees like the exit door ahead of him, he does that more and more. He's just like, well, we've got to get the plot from point B to point C, so let's throw this in here.
Yeah, and to be honest though, I was so involved in all the other, like Hera especially, and all the other characters that I didn't mind that this character was a plot device, because I'm like, okay, I didn't have time to invest on this other character at this late of the run. So if you're just going to be giving me another plot device, I'm okay with that. That's what I figured. I mean, I didn't quite think one way or the other.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, what was the last point I wanted to make? There was another point I wanted to make. I forgot. Oh, and the end, that this was like also an interesting thing, because at the end we find out there were some character reveals. It's the same reveal as Greg Parkstrom.
Well, I think we should avoid spoiling two runs at the same time, but I think that is actually absolutely true.
That's the same plot. It's the same character, same thing, because the whole time you're thinking, where is that character? Because that's a very important character in Greek mythology, and they're not there. And you think about it, and then at the end it came out like, holy shit, Greg Carden is first. So
excellent point.
Like, that gave me a chuckle. That gave me such a big chuckle, because I'm like, that's pretty neat. I mean, so I was like, that's amazing. But anyway, yes. So I think we're reaching the end of the almost the end of the episode. So what's our verdict?
Well, I don't have my handy dandy cutout, so I'm going to need you to hold it up for me as I give mine.
Okay.
Do you want to go first, or should I?
You can go first.
Well, I thought that this was a gorgeously drawn run that was certainly an interesting revisionist take on Wonder Woman. But I thought when all is said and done, this was a hollow story that depended too much on thinly sketched out characters and motivation and background for Wonder Woman that are just too generic for what should be a distinctive character. I don't think that it ultimately works, and so I have to find this run unworthy. I'm giving it a thumbs down.
So, thumbs down. Do you want to tell people one more time what this is about?
This is Arishem the Celestial. He visits civilizations across the known universe, judging their life to decide whether they have passed the celestial experiment and whether they are deemed worthy or unworthy for survival. I am deeming this life form unworthy. What did you think?
Very, very, very to the point, Zach. So to me, I loved the story for what it was, which was gods combining and, being backstabbing whores, pretty much. Sorry, sex worker, as we should say. without money. But the thing is like, and then I love the art, love the character design, love the coloring. So from that point of view, I do think it's worthy of survival. As a Wonder Woman story, I agree with you, and I do think that it's unworthy as a Wonder Woman story. I didn't necessarily have the same problem as you were talking about, but I just still don't understand what Diana Prince is or Wonder Woman is and why I should care about her. I really want someone to tell me that. And as of right now, I don't know.
Well, I'm sure that this will not be the last Wonder Woman that we review, so maybe one of these days somebody will.
Right. I'm really hoping. So here, I don't hear a lot of things about G. Willow Wilson's run yet, so I'm kind of looking forward to that because she brings out a very distinct voice, especially when what she did with Kamala Khan and Miss Marvel. It's just like you fall in love with the character, you understand where they're coming from, you understand what they're doing. I really hope that she's doing it at this point. I haven't read it yet, but I don't know. I still have George Perez, Gail Simone to read. Maybe one of them will tell me. I'm waiting for that day.
Well, until then, that's a split verdict on Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang. So this run survives to live another day, but watch your back because we are here to judge.
Though, because I feel like as Wonder Woman, it kind of trashes, so it's not worthy.
Yeah, but we didn't give it a unanimous thumbs down, so I don't feel that we can. I don't think we can destroy it. I would have happily destroyed it, but you allowed it to survive another day.
You know, I kind of came back and saved it.
You know why? Because of your values of strength through compassion.
You got me there. But no, and the thing is like also because it brings us like I think I have to give it a extra point because it allowed us to have this exciting conversation.
That's right.
I think so next week we're going to be we're thinking about we're still kind of getting into the schedule of it all, and we'll try our best to kind of put out one episode a week. So next week we are going to back to our roots of Marvel and going to be reading Mark Waid and Wieringo. Mark Wieringo, I think.
Mike Wieringo, that's
Mike
right.
Wieringo's Fantastic Four run, which is about 37 issues of Fantastic, or Four being fantastic.
Well, so, I thought that's not what we decided to do next week, but all right, I guess that's what we're reviewing next week.
What we decided that we're going to do?
I thought that we were going to be talking about The Truth, Red, White, and Black by Robert Morales and Kyle Baker, as well as two different runs of The Crew, one by Christopher Priest and one by Ta-Nehisi Coates. But apparently that's not what we're going to be talking about.
I thought that we were talking about that for another episode, because isn't that what we discussed on the...
Well, this is Fangirl and Zach clearly having it together.
We're professionals, damn it.
Professional video podcasters.
We're professionals. We're like completely trust me, we do talk to each other. We do talk to each other, but maybe
by the way, folks, none of this is getting edited out. This is my favorite part of the show.
No, do you know how hard editing is? I had to edit 1 minute out from last episode because you were gone. That shit was terrible.
Never again.
But never again. So anyway, which one you want to do? I am all for both. Like I have no...
Well, I guess that'll come as a surprise to our viewers. So whichever one you want to see more, assume that's what we're doing and tune in next time.
To find out which one we're gonna be doing. So from Fangirl and Zach, have a very good night or whenever you're watching it. And tune in next week for one of the two that we mentioned. We're gonna be doing that.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.